When an animal is as exciting in its proximity to ourselves as a whale can be, there's no question that people will pursue a humpback whale. They will go to it.
I'm one of the new generation. I was not raised in the old way, and because of that, I've got a certain handicap as we move into the cultural part of our lifestyle.
It's sort of neat to teach them. And so you get the experience of teaching kids who don't usually get to do that.
Hello, I'm Scott Foster, and welcome to the best of Rain Country. Our first program was broadcast on October 17th, 1985. And since that time, we've traveled all over Southeast. To the north and Skagway and the renovation of the historic Gold Rush towns, to the south, to Hyder, the tiny community with the close Canadian ties. We've flown over Southeast in helicopter tours of the ice field. We've been on our waters with the Marine Highway System and under Southeast seas while we've been scuba diving. We've looked at the history of Southeast that's been saved in our museums, lost with the dismantling of the Juneau Douglas Bridge, and lived through the lives of adventurers like Amos Berg. And we've had a great time playing racquetball and bowling and building model trains and flying model planes and belly and folk dancing and snow sculpting and camping with kids and skiing and more. And now, from all of these stories, the Rain Country staff has selected some of the best. The choices weren't easy, but here is the offering. We begin with the first of our Best Of program, which is actually the first story on the first Rain Country program. It deals with a Juneau High School teacher who's made an international reputation studying the whales of Southeast.
They're 45 feet long, but feed on small herring and krill. They winter in Mexico and Hawaii, but migrate 3,000 miles to summer in Southeast Alaska. They weigh 33 tons, but can jump their entire body completely out of the water. Humpback whales are the sight of Southeast Alaska, and Chuck Giraz is the whale man of Southeast and beyond.
And I suddenly recognized that the wind at my back, just a light breeze, had been blowing me closer and closer to this animal. And I then recognized that if I didn't move myself, I would literally blow right up onto its back, so I better move. So I lifted up the oar, I inserted it into the oarlock. I took a sweep on the oar and made a high screeching sound of metal on metal. And that animal, much as a young man flexing his muscle, became very well defined. The center of the body rose out of the water in what obviously was a flexure of the nose dropping towards the tail and the tail dropping towards the nose, and then a tremendous thrust on that tail threw the animal down. And I thought, oh, gee, I've wakened a whale. And I was okay for about a half a minute. My camera's last shot was at 15 feet. That was the focal set. The next thing I knew is I saw this vessel rise out of the water because it looked like a Nautilus submarine coming out, and it went up. I grabbed my camera in time to take a picture. Remember, focused at 15 feet. The only thing that's in focus is a wall of water and droplets at 15 feet. The animal then breached 7 more times, which allowed me 2 pictures with my hand steady and probably 3 more very, very quivery, because I recognized, Giraz, you've done yourself in. If this animal lands on you, you are dead.
It didn't, and Giraz isn't. What he is a Juneau High School biology teacher who grew up in the dry flatlands of the Midwest, but became fascinated with whales when he moved to Juneau in the mid-60s. After spending some 60,000 hours on the water watching them, Giraz stopped counting the time, but continued the work. Since then, Giraz and his nonprofit education and research organization, SeaSearch, has made a series of discoveries that have placed their names among the serious whale researchers in the world. Giraz ticks off facts about humpbacks as smoothly as water running off the whale's back.
Here in southeast Alaska, if you go out in the winter and you see a whale, it wouldn't surprise me if the downtime is 1/2 hour. Right. If we only have 5 hours of daylight, then you might only see that animal 10 times in a daylight hour, okay, or in daylight period. In contrast to that, in the summer, an animal might be down for 8 minutes, or 5 minutes, or 3 minutes, and then come up to the surface and take 8 breaths just in between that. Okay, that means, of course, we see much more of the animal. The behaviors in the summer are much more dynamic. There are surface activities. The feed is near the surface. Their arguments with one another occur at the surface. In the winter, fewer arguments. The feed is down deep. The activity is very, very, very reduced.
Where they congregate depends on the patterns of human movement and feed.
There's very little question now, but that aside from feed characteristics, whales are responsive to what we do as human beings. And when we use an area a lot with vessels, there's no question that the animals respond to that use, and they respond to that use on the basis of, if I may use the expression, personal space. That is, how much space do they have?
It's not surprising that upon seeing the blow from one of the estimated 600 whales that are in Southeast in the summer, boaters frequently turn toward the mammal for a closer view. The law says you will not pursue humpback whales and will not upset their habitat by fouling their water or taking their food.
When an animal is as exciting in its proximity to ourselves as a whale can be, there's no question that people will, quote unquote, as defined in the law, pursue a humpback whale. They will go to it, that's pursuit. And they will do it more than once. And they will do it oblivious of how their vessel sounds. Okay? So, do I feel that people ought to pursue them? Yes, in order for people to learn. Do I feel that that's deleterious in some cases? Absolutely, provably deleterious in some cases.
Surveys show 80% of tourists coming to Alaska want to see wildlife. A killer whale Giraz and his students brought to Juneau to dissect proved his point about local public interest in whales.
And what's very apparent now is that when we put a killer whale out on the tarmac there at the Marine Tech Center, in a single day, 750 people come by, and we think, oh my goodness, you'll not type that. And the next day, over 1,000 people come to look at that animal. And those are all community people. Now, it's obvious that in this community, we want to show people what whales are about. In terms of tourism, there is no question that if we present things like that full-bodied whale out there, and we show them what the lungs and the heart and the genitalia look like, that will impress them. That will make them happy that they've learned something that was worth going 2,000 miles to go find out about.
Giraz thinks the public needs to have access to whales, but hopefully not disturbing them. The solution? Make replicas of whale skeletons.
Make it out of fiberglass and epoxy resin, put it up in a place where they can go up and touch it, and you'll find people are extremely happy with that experience here, and that's what will count.
Giraz can make accurate replicas by studying real whales. In 1981, 2 whales were found on the beach in Seymour Canal on Admiralty Island. Giraz took 114 students from 3 different high schools who for 2 solid months from first light until after last light dissected and studied the whales.
We began in January, and we worked all of February and all of March, and literally on April 1st of 1981, we delivered 2 full sets of bones to Juneau at the docks here. We retrieved every single bone, we retrieved the baleen, we recorded where the barnacles were on the body, we recorded where the lice were on the body, we identified what pigmentation patterns existed, and went through the entire body with blubber thicknesses and tissue samplings, and we even checked for the level of DDT and PCBs in the blubber.
And so Chuck Giraz continues his study of whales, collection of their bones, and plans for replications so the general public can have access to this marvelous creature.
While the Rain Country staff lives in Juneau, many of our stories originate in other communities. We've seen the Eagles in Haines, toured St. Michael's Cathedral in Sitka, visited the Shady Ladies in Wrangell, played at the Little Norway Festival in Petersburg, talked with the mother of 5 generations in Cake, and learned about puppets in Ketchikan. Another of our selections for the best of Rain Country originates in yet another southeast community.
Elfin Cove has no roads into it. Boardwalks replace streets. There's no ferry service. In fact, the only public transportation to and from the cove are the mail planes that land there on floats. Most of the people that live in a place like Elfin Cove live there for one of 2 reasons, if not both: to be close to the fishing grounds or to get away from governmental and other influences of the bigger cities.
I grew up in Juneau, and I lived there for quite a few years. I went to grade school there and high school and a few years after that, and I finally found that I didn't know anybody there, even though I had a lot of friends, but it had changed so much since I had been there, that, and the value system had changed so much, and you know, it was, people were getting ripped off and crime was happening and people were getting raped, and those kind of things never happened when I was growing up there. And one day I just turned around and said, I don't want to live here anymore. It's gotten too bad for me, and that's when I decided to look for another place to live. And Juneau's a mini, ugly, big city, and I don't care to be there more than a brief period.
But even a tiny place like Elfin Cove changes. The most noticeable change in recent years is the influx of the sport charter businesses. Like communities everywhere, the introduction of something new often causes frictions.
We have commercial fishing drags that are certain areas that commercial boats fish, and there are certain rules that you run those drags by, just from historical precedents, and usually for good reasons. And these guys come up here and they run them the wrong way, and they get in your way, and they cause nothing but hassles, and I think they should be more respectful of the historical ways that have been established.
Resentment of a new element in a community is often sparked by a general dislike of progress and growth.
I like to see progress, but I don't like to see it come in Elfin Cove. I don't like to see it spoiled by other people coming in. I don't like to see too much stuff go on, like telephones coming in here. I don't like that.
When I visited the Cove, the only telephone in town was a community phone, but an area-wide phone system was just being installed.
I like the idea. I think it's a good idea. You don't have to run downtown through this deep snow to answer a telephone in the wintertime.
We're going to get a telephone. God forbid, but I don't see why not. You got to make calls occasionally, and whether you got to go downtown and use a public telephone and wait in line and all this other hassle, or just simply pick it up off your wall, it doesn't make much difference. You know, you're plugged into the telephone circuit. When you need spare parts, you got to call. You can't write letters. You're going to lose 2 weeks if you write a letter. So yeah, we're going to get a telephone.
Ironically, Roy Clements, who didn't want telephones, is the first in town to have TV. Roy, a 35-year resident of the Cove, installed his own satellite dish.
In my time, I never had to watch TV. I never got to see shows or anything because I lived out here and I lived in the sticks. I lived in the Taku River where we had nothing. And I lived there until 1939. So I didn't get to see too much. And then just the last few years, I got the chance to see TV.
Roy installed his dish only after an opportunity for the Cove to receive state-funded television was rejected through a vote at a town meeting.
With community television, You go to visit someone at their house, they're watching TV. Where now, you go to visit someone at their house, you sit down and talk to them, there's no television going. And it really affects the lifestyle of the people.
The community meeting that controlled the fate of television in the Cove is one of 2 forums that make up its municipal government. The other is the meetings of the Elfin Cove Nonprofit Corporation. There is no mayor and no city council. Whoever shows up at the meetings gets to discuss and vote on the issues and events that affect their lives.
Ferries, hydro, school building, community building, sewerage, all of the things that involve a community. Now there's a lot of concern about float houses. And what are we going to do about the boat harbor and keeping the things clean?
The Cove's nonprofit corporation was created to receive and distribute state oil revenue sharing money. 85% of that money has gone towards exploring the feasibility of hydropower for the town, and the rest has been dedicated to the maintenance of existing facilities such as docks and boardwalks. Greg Howe, elected chairman of the board, lives on an island a number of miles from the Cove.
I think probably the reason I was elected as the chairman is because of that, because I live away from the community and I don't get involved in the little things that always seem to happen in small communities, cabin fever type things, you know, where people get nitpicky with each other over things that are really of no concern. And because I don't live there and I don't get involved in those things, I get along well with everybody. My position as the chairman of the corporation is merely as somebody to direct the meetings, and hopefully everybody will contribute just as much as the next person, you know, and that all the decisions we make will be, you know, at least the majority of the people.
One of the major improvements the corporation members are presently dealing with is a legislatively funded community center. The old Swanson's Elfin Cove store and the property it sits on has been purchased, and when plans are finalized, the store will be torn down to make way for the new building.
There's a lot of people that felt it was you know, why should we get this much money to build this huge expensive building, you know? But on the other hand, you know, there's no place for our kids to go play inside or anything in the wintertime, and there's no place for the community to get together, and I think it's an important thing to have. We now have a community building, and with the library and medical supplies, it's full. You know, if you have a community meeting and everybody shows up, there's no room. And we have no school right now, and as things stand, there's not enough children for the state to supply a school and a teacher. But if we have a community building that the school system can lease a room from, they may give us a teacher.
There are other things that will have to be faced in the coming years. The state ferries will bring an influx of transients, a sewage system will have to be installed, garbage will become a concern, they may even begin building roads, and then there are the inevitable property taxes.
I believe in that when a person builds his home and tears out the stumps and everything, it's his home, he should keep it. That's his home. There shouldn't be any taxes put on our homes. I don't know, that's my belief. We pay enough taxes in our life without having to pay taxes on our home.
Just like taxes, change is inevitable. The people of the Cove, like all the people of Southeast, have to take it as it comes. But through personal involvement in their community meetings, they hope to shape the future to fit their lifestyles. As they work to do so, they can breathe a little easier knowing that, for now at least, time is on their side.
It's true that Elfin Cove is getting more and more of the amenities of civilization, but it's coming very slowly. And even though we have 3 fishing lodges for sports fishermen that are replacing the commercial fishermen, it isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It's happening very slowly. And I think we're going to be able to preserve our way of life quite a bit longer here at Elfin Cove than what's happening in the major communities of Southeast.
Most of the people at K2 Television are involved in the production of Rain Country one way or another, whether it's answering the telephone or taking care of paperwork, logging or scheduling the program, to actually producing individual stories, repairing equipment, or doing the engineering necessary to get a program out on the air. Two staffers work on Rain Country full-time and more. One of them is Skip Gray. He's the chief videographer. Skip, when you're going out to shoot a story for Rain Country, what do you try to do as the person who's bringing back the pictures?
Well, I try to let the viewer be a part of whatever the activity is that we're shooting. And I feel like I'm sort of the emissary of the audience, our audience, in those places, and I like to try to use the camera to let the audience see from a first-hand look what's happening in the particular situation we're in, be it on a fishing boat or in an airplane or whatever the situation is. Get right up close and look at it and be a part of the activity that we're dealing with. One of the most exciting shoots I've ever been on was the piece we did on the tagging of brown bears with John Shane, and it's just exactly the kind of situation where most people don't get a chance, will never get a chance to be that close to a live brown bear and even get to touch it and see people handling something that could just snap your head off if it wasn't under some sort of drugs. And another facet of it that I get to see that the audience doesn't sometimes is, like in this particular situation, unfortunately it was too dark by the time this happened, but these people were actually putting their lives on the line for the safety of the bears. They were